I actually took the next step out of morbid curiosity to see if anything else could go wrong. They
Mm-hmm.
said, I had to have hit it all. Is there anything possible else that could go wrong? And they said, I actually took, and they said, for some reason, when they took that next step, when everything was so dark, for some reason, they said it was almost like temporary defeat left their life. And it just went to someone else's life and said, this person doesn't know when to give up. I'm just going to go screw up someone else's life. That's going to be a whole lot easier. And they said, and then things started working out on their own.
Hello, and welcome to In the Rising podcast. My name is Bettina Brown, and this is the platform I've chosen to talk about living a life that's in alignment with your hopes, your dreams, and your goals. Walking away from shame and blame that does nothing to propel your life forward. I really enjoy having guests on this podcast that are interested and encouraged to share their own story of how they decided to rise up in their life to provide meaning for their life. And my guest today is E.A. Csolkovits, who is the head of Givers University. And I'm really excited for you to hear how he got his start. All right, EA. So I'm thrilled to talk to you today. And just reading your short bio, I have a feeling there's a long bio, but just getting through the short bio, it's just like, wow. And then wow again, and wow again. You've been a chairman. You've had an operated Columbia nutrition system. You have had a business radio talk show. And then you've also started from different routes, right? You were not given that silver spoon from the get-go, right? You said your name was Go Chop Wood. So yeah. How did you kind of get started, into where this journey began for you?
Happy to share that with you, and thank you for asking. I live in Michigan now, but I'm born and raised in the Chicagoland area, and my father was a milkman. And he had his own route. He was a milk delivery man, so he had his own truck and one-man operation for a company called Twin Oaks Dairy. And back then, people had, there was a box outside everyone's house. That was the milkman box, right? And the milk box. And my father put the milk in there. So at 5 years old, I would help him on his route, and and only the big 18-wheelers were refrigerated. So he had to go at 3 a.m. and chop these huge 6-foot blocks of ice down into smaller pieces, and you put that on top of the milk, and that's how I kept it cold. So I remember fondly, being able to help him during those times. And then at 16 years old, I took my first big step into prosperity, and I became a janitor. Now, I didn't mind being a janitor because business was always picking up. What? Anyway, so so here I was at the ripe old age of 16, and there was 2 extraordinary events, and I can share with you that probably the 2 most pivotal events that happened in my life. Pivotal. There's actually, not 16 syllables there. Pivotal. Sometimes you have to use Mr. Tongue and Mr. Lip together. They form words. And
all together to work together.
Yeah. So, I usually never say anything 10 minutes if I can say it in 20. So I guess now that includes my words, even a single word. Anyway, so I was able to be bonded at 16 years old working for this janitorial service, and it basically means insured. Mm-hmm. So if my buffer hit some big piece of equipment that was expensive, insurance company would pay for it. It also allowed me to be in very expensive places and very expensive homes. Every Wednesday, I cleaned the home of a lady who, when I say her name, it won't mean anything until I make the movie reference. There was a movie out a couple years back, and I'm sure it'll be on streaming for a number of years because it's actually a pretty good view. It's called The Founder. It's about McDonald's and the McDonald's story, and it basically talks about Ray Kroc, and he's sort of the focus of it. So the movie is called The Founder. And Michael Keaton plays Ray Kroc. I can say, first of all, in the beginning of the movie, it says based on a true story. It is based on a true story, but it's not the true story.
Right.
I lived it. I lived there in the greater Oak Brook area. I witnessed the whole thing in my lifetime. During the movie, Michael Keaton, and by the way, if you haven't seen it, check it out because it's actually a pretty good view. Ray is painted a way he's not. They have to have, it's all Hollywood spin. But there is a lot of events that are nodded to that are, the event actually did happen. It's just not portrayed the way it happened. And so in the movie, Michael Keaton, Ray Kroc, is talking to a lady outside his office the whole time through the entire movie. And that lady says, June this, June this, June that. That's June Martino. That's the lady whose house I cleaned every single Wednesday. Mm-hmm. When I met her, she already had the third most controlling stock in McDonald's. She was actually the first woman to ever trade on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Mm-hmm. She was an amazing lady. And so one day I just asked her about the whole McDonald's thing because I was in there every Wednesday and I was astonished how approachable this woman was, who was worth more zeros than I had fingers and toes, very approachable and nice and kind and easy to talk to. And so one day I just asked her about McDonald's and what happened. And she put her arm around me and brought me in the kitchen the entire day. And here I am at 16 years old, tells me the entire story. I mean, all day long, even has the maid and butlers, which she had one of each, bringing us food in the kitchen so she'd keep telling me the story. And I kept thinking, man, who's she telling the story to? I'm like this, I'm this snot-nosed 16-year-old kid, and she is telling me this whole story. And at one point she tells me, that there was no money. And in the movie, they do make a nod to this. She goes to Ray Kroc and she says, Michael Keaton, and says, Ray, we don't have any money. And so she tells me about that event, that there was a time when Ray couldn't afford to pay her. And they made an agreement that he would pay her in stock instead of actual money. And by the way, at that point, the stock was worth less than zero. I mean, it was underwater stock because there's no money. Obviously, the company's not worth, it's not worth anything yet. And but she didn't know that. Anyway, so along the story, to condense the story, she then said and made an agreement with Ray that she would keep working for him. He'd pay her in stock, and he'd take phone calls from bill collectors if they were calling her personally for money. And I asked her, why'd you do it? I said, June, I work paycheck to paycheck, Friday to Friday. Why did you work for nothing? Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have done it. I need that paycheck. If I don't get the paycheck Friday, I'm not showing on Saturday. I need the check, right? And I remember when I asked her the question, Bettina, she sat back and stared at me with this blank look on her face, staring right at me. And I thought, and I'm looking, because I realized I just asked her a question no one ever asked her. Why did you do it? And when she spoke, it made the hair stand up on the back of my neck. Not only what she said, the way she said it, I remember just like it was yesterday, even though it's coming up on 40 years ago. I still remember like it was yesterday. When I asked her, why did you work for nothing? She said, because I believed in Ray. And I thought to myself, my first thought, Bettina, was, that's it. If I could find me a Ray Kroc, someone that put me under their wing. Mm-hmm. It certainly didn't work out too bad for her. I'm cleaning her $1 million home. It was $1 million home back then. Yeah. And she's got a full-time maid and a butler and Rolls Royce in the garage. And I'm thinking, this is, that's what I need. I don't even know what I don't know. I don't even know the right questions. I didn't know what a mentor was. I spent my hooked on phonics money on something else, I think. So, I didn't even have it. And that's an interesting reference for any of your listeners if I just dated myself on hooked on phonics. So I remember throwing it out there. I just threw it out there. I thought, where would I find my Ray Kroc? Where would he be? How would I find that person? Now, it was interesting to note that I never thought I wasn't going to meet him. From instantly, I believed I would. I was just wondering, where is he and how would I meet him? And it wasn't 2 or 3 months later, got a phone call to the office, the same janitorial service. This guy was in from Michigan, opening a diamond store. My boss sent me over to show him some carpeting, and the guy offered me a job. That man became my mentor. Mm-hmm. The father I never had, even though I had a father. I became the son he never had, even though he had a son. Mm-hmm. And I can share with you, he was a puritanical genius, not what I refer to, and I've met thousands of them in my lifetime, what I call educated idiots. Mm-hmm. They have all the book knowledge. They can spew all the information at you because they've read it in a book, but they themselves have never done it. They have no execution skills, no implementation skills. He was a puritanical genius. I mean, he really, really knew. And so I was very blessed to have him as my mentor. So that event in my life was so significant to me. And I became a huge advocate from that point onward to having a mentor. And, in my world, if you don't have a mentor, we call that naive. That's what we call it. But everyone today is so interested in being preemptive and, I'm going to be the smartest person in the room. And my mentor told me, he said, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
You're in the wrong
Don't,
room.
yeah, you shouldn't be the smartest person in the room. That's not the way to do it, right? And he taught me that thing. So the only superpower, Bettina, I had, there was only one. I had the ability to say, I don't know that. I don't know about that. Could you teach me about that? That was it. Just that simple. I didn't have any problem with saying, I don't know that. And could you teach me? And because of that, I was able to meet incredibly wise people over the years who willingly, just because I asked that question, shared incredible information. And then on my radio show, I interviewed over 1,000 millionaires in 2 years. 1,000 millionaires in 2 years. And I thought, why them? What makes them so different? What makes them so special? What did they do? What did the 1,000 people do that the majority of people do not do? In fact, even today, the average income of an American, if you add all of their years of income together, it's not quite $1 million yet. And these people are all millionaires. I thought so. So I wanted to find out what are those common threads. And before and after the interviews is when I got to ask the real questions I was interested in, the ones that weren't on the show. The details of how about this and how about that. And one of the things I found out were two things that were directly relatable to this important event I had in my life with my mentor. Sam Robbins was his name. He taught me later on, don't worry about the answers. He said, everyone always wants to find the answer. How do I do this? He says, wrong approach. He said, that's not the approach. He said, focus on asking the right questions. He said, the answers are omnipresent. They're always around us and they always will be around us. He said, most people get the wrong answers in life because they ask the wrong questions and then they're surprised when they got the wrong answer. But they asked the wrong question. And inadvertently, Bettina, I didn't even know I was doing it. It was out of true ignorance, right? Simply not knowing. I threw it out there and said, where would I find my mentor? How would I find him? What would he look? And inadvertently, I asked the right question. And because of asking the right question, I believe that that's how I met him. And I was so blessed to meet this gentleman and the lessons he taught me. So for your listeners, get a mentor, have a mentor. One of the things you're doing that's great with your show, Bettina, is that you are a form of mentorship. And people should follow it and listen to it. And then, even if they've heard the same stuff before, but they get that one nugget, it only takes that one little nugget of information to create that epiphany that leads to a revelation in our life. And a revelation is something that's always been present, now seen in a brand new light. That's what a revelation is. And so all of a sudden we get these things, and then our direction in our life changes. So to just share a story, and I'm talking about me, I've had a few accomplishments and blessings in my life. None of them are as long as my last name, so I still got to get to work. But anyway, to share an interesting story that my mentor shared with me, to let you know what a puritanical genius is, right? He told me about what it was like to grow up in the Great Depression. And he said, people were jumping off of buildings. They had lost their fortunes and felt there was no reason to live. He said multi-mile long soup kitchen lines, multi-mile long just to get a bowl of soup. He said there was no money. People were trying to get food. He said, for some of our meals, we ate cardboard. And I went, whew. It immediately puts everything in perspective in our life, you think you got it hard, right? Try having a meal that's cardboard, right? And one day he was walking by a store, and he'd been by the store a number of times, and he always saw the store was empty, and there was a guy standing in the back every day. So he just went in. No one was doing anything really. They were sort of walking around and, just trying to, and like almost zombified because of events. And he went and talked with this guy inside the store, and it turns out he was the owner, and it was a sewing machine store, and it was filled with sewing machines that were basically collecting dust. The guy was the owner, and he said, I don't have any customers coming in. He said, they don't have money to eat, let alone they're looking for a meal. They're not buying a sewing machine. And he said, and I bought all these things, and they're collecting dust. And he said, I had to let all my employees go. He said, it's just me every day. So my mentor had this flash in his mind, and he said to him, how about if I help you sell some of these? And the guy looked at him and said, what do you have in mind? He said, well, how about if we sell them on payments. He said, people can't afford to buy a sewing machine. He said, but what if we sold them on payments? I'll split the payments with you. I'll back any of the machines in case someone walks with one. You'll never be out of a machine. I'll guarantee it. And he said, and maybe I could help you move some machines. And the guy goes, man, they're just collecting dust and they're paid for it. Go for it. Move them. Mm-hmm. And then the next thing he did, which was extraordinary, he put together a flyer and he put the flyer all around. And the flyer basically was women to work from home. He said he could not keep up with the response. He said the response was more, he never even did catch up. He said because no one was hiring. And the fact that anyone was hiring was astonishing. Yeah. And he put together a way where women could work from home and they would buy the sewing machine on payments. He would provide them with the patterns. He would provide them with the material to sew with, and he guaranteed he would buy the clothing from them, thus guaranteeing their income. They could then make the payments on the sewing machine and also have an income, which everyone needed, right? Then he took this same clothing that was handmade and sold it to stores as high-quality handmade clothing at a deep discounted price that they could then sell their customers. In 18 months' time, Bettina, while people are jumping off of buildings, multi-mile-long soup kitchen lines, he earned $1 million. Now, that's an extraordinary gentleman. That's a person. And he said he attributes it to the network of women he built, the community of women that were all on the same page. And he said that was where it was. And this thing just flourished across multi-states overnight. He said, I really genuinely couldn't keep up with it. And so that gentleman was the man. And then at 19 years old, I simply asked him, I said, Sam, will you teach me everything? Teach it all to me, everything. I don't want you to hold back. And he said, okay, I'll teach you everything. But I want one thing from you. When the time is right, and you will know that time, I want you to teach as many people as you can everything I taught you. And I said, okay. So at 19 years old, Bettina, I made a vow. I made an oath to my mentor that today is known as Givers University. That's how it manifests itself. And it all started because of this commitment and this, and people say, well, he was just at the right place at the right time. No. That none of that's true. And I can share with you after 40 years of experience talking to 1,000 millionaires. Every one of those millionaires, Bettina, every one of them had a story about a time in their life where everything told them to stop. Their friends, their family, sometimes their spouses, sometimes the neighbors, the economic conditions at that time, the bank, you name it. Everything told them, not some of them, every one of them, 1,000 millionaires, all had that story. And they all said, and some of them, by the way, I should say all, they all had the same story, similar in nature, but they all did an interesting thing. It was a common through all of them. And some of them, when they were explaining it to me, even used the same words. And they didn't even know each other, different industries. It was over 2 years. They even used the same words. They said, do you know, I actually took the next step out of morbid curiosity to see if anything else could go wrong. They said, I had to have hit it all. Is there anything possible else that could go wrong? And they said, I actually took, and they said, for some reason, when they took that next step, when everything was so dark, for some reason, they said it was almost like temporary defeat left their life. And it just went to someone else's life and said, this person doesn't know when to give up. I'm just going to go screw up someone else's life. That's going to be a whole lot easier. And they said, and then things started working out on their own, sometimes even, and they use these words, sometimes even in spite of me. They started working out. And they said it was astonishing. Now, I say to you, if here's 1,000 millionaires all telling that same story and all talking about how important persistence is and how important it is in having that clarity and going forward and no matter what, taking that one more step. Because you don't have to reach a destination. You just focus on one more step. And then after you do that step, what do? Well, one more step. And then you get there. So And these are things I'm sharing that my mentor shared with me. And we teach people how to do something that's, I think, is so critical today. And I'm going to hit it in our interest of time. Forgive me, and I ask forgiveness from your listeners because I'm going to hit it real quick. But they can listen to your podcast multiple times, and they should, because of what I'm about ready to go over. There's a word today, Bettina, that I've witnessed that has changed definitions. And I can use as an example of how this happens, the word diet, D-I-E-T. Many years ago, if I went to a meeting with a couple of people, that meeting was called a diet. Right? Mm-hmm. And then later on, if I got a stipend or an allowance, that was called a diet. And in my lifetime, as I was growing up, the word diet meant the way you ate. It was your daily eating habits. Today, if I say the word diet, it means weight loss. Right? Mm-hmm. All time spelled the same way, same letters, spelled the same way, totally different meanings. Right? Now, I submit to you and to your listeners, we are witnessing the same thing happening with the word called community. How many times, I ask your listeners, has this happened to you? It's happened to me more than once already. That is, you get, join my community, come join me, come, we're all like mine. And you join, and within 6 hours, they're trying to sell you everything under the sun. Mm-hmm. Right? That's not a community. That's a customer hit list. It's a prospect list. Why are you doing the bait and switch on me, right? Just call it what it is. If I'm interested in your products, I'll stay on the list and maybe learn. If not, why call it a community when it's not? So I refer to these as taker communities. And a taker community is basically set up in order to take something from you. And usually it's money, right? By contrast, in a huge way, there's what's called a giver community. And a giver community is set up and established with a whole different intention in mind. And I'm going to share the 7 steps of setting up a giver community real quick in sort of a bullet kind of fashion, if you will, so your listeners can hear it over and over again. But it spells the word discern, D-I-S-C-E-R-N. Those are the 7 steps. So I'm going to hit them real quick. The first one is D, discern, decide. When you want to form your own giver community, first of all, you have to decide, who do you want? And the first thing you want to ask is, how do I decide? Right? What do you look for? So one of the things we teach, in fact, the one word, Bettina, if someone has said, what do you teach in Givers University? I would say we teach in one word, discernment. And simply put, first of all, I say to your listeners, we love everybody. I say it again, we love everybody. And we teach people how to separate the person who we love from their deeds, which we may not love. And we teach an observation skill. Don't listen to what they're saying. Watch what they're doing. Observe, because there's the truth of it. Right? Mm-hmm. Anyone can learn the right thing to say, but their deeds are going to scream what kind of person they are. Right? So we actually even have a checklist called the 25 do's. These are the 25 things you should watch for, the 25 deeds you should be watching. And you can put which side, giver side, taker side, and all at the bottom, you do a total, and you're already there. You already have an idea. So when we say giver, we're not labeling a person because we don't label people. We're labeling deeds, giver deeds. When we say taker, we're not labeling a person a taker. We're labeling taker deeds. So the D in discern is decide. And we help teach people absolutely free. We do all of this for free. We teach them, how do you decide? It's like one guy said a few interviews back, he said, oh, that's so great stuff. Oh man, I just read a book and it said I need to have 5 good people around me. I said, you're right. You do. You need to have 5 good people around you. One question, which 5? And then he I have little orphan Annie eyes staring at me, right? Blank. And I said, you see my point? No one's teaching us today the vital skill of how do you discern who should I pull closer in my life and who should I respectfully, not rude or nasty, who should I respectfully begin to distance myself from, right? Because they're going to make me collateral damage if I bring them closer, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm a self-improvement person. You're a self-improvement person. Bettina, no one's teaching about, what if the other guy's not doing it right? What should I do about that? Yeah. I don't have control over what he's doing, right? So D is for discern. We teach people how to invite those people that they want to have as a part of their community. The S is for seed. You want to explain. And one of the important parts in having a community is expectational agreements. What are you going to expect? And have everyone agree on it up front. This is
Mm-hmm.
what we expect of each other. And this is how we're going to hold each other accountable as a part of this, assuming it's 2 to 12 people as an example, this intimate group of people, right? So that's seed. C is convene, meet on a regular time, whether it's weekly, whether it's every couple of weeks, once a month. R is for rotate, or I'm sorry, E is for establish, give it a name. I think how you spell D-I-S, right? E is establish, right? You think with a last name, but it's still, even today, if someone stops me in the middle of my last name, I have to start from the
Start from
beginning.
the beginning.
Yeah. Wait, I had momentum going. You stopped me, right? So establish is give your community a name, right? Ben Franklin called his community the Leather Apron Club. Henry Ford called his giver community the Four Vagabonds. Give it a name, give it an identity, make it real. R, rotate the chairperson. Whoever's in charge, have them be a different person meeting the meeting, right? And N is numbers. Be a part of multiple communities. So again, the 7 letters. Decide, invite, seed, convene, establish, rotate, and numbers. And we even have on our YouTube channel, we have a playlist that's called How to Form Your Community. We call it a junto. A junto basically is a group of people that meet together for a common purpose or interest, right? So we call them givers juntos. But we actually have 2-minute clips, a series of 2-minute clips that just are in order, and we take them from this is how you set it up, and step by step by step, all the way through. Ultimately, we're going to have 25 2-minute clips on how do you form your own givers junto, or AKA givers community, around you, because it's so critical to have that advisory board of peers, if you will, that are, and they have it set up in the right way. So it isn't like the so many mastermind groups that come together and then within a couple of months, they just dissipate. There's a reason why they dissipate and fall aside. We know the answers to that. So I recommend people go to the YouTube channel. It's all free. Just go there. And also they can go to our newsletter at our website, giversuniversity.com. It's plural, giversuniversity.com. Sign up for our newsletter. Again, it's free. They're going to get an email right away because we don't spam. They'll say, do you want to talk with these people? If you don't say yes to that, you get nothing further from us. We will not communicate because we don't spam.
Mm-hmm.
Once you say yes, 2 hours later, you're going to get that checklist I talked about, the 25 do's, absolutely free. Download it, print it off, use it in your life in discerning with your relationships. It is so granular and gives you, these are the things you should be watching people do, and it'll help you with your life. And then every Thursday, we send out a newsletter called the Giver's Toolbox every Thursday morning. It's 5-minute read or less. And that's it, once a week. And from that, they find out about us. And we have online courses and who Givers University is. But our main intention is to get it out there, to help people do something that's so vital in their life.
And what you said, too, is your main intention is to get it out there. And so your main action follows that intention of get it out there, and basically helping people have a group, or those 5 people who also don't know the meaning of giving up, and have that belief, because that can stop you. The tongue is powerful, and it can be powerful in a positive and also negative.
Yes.
And just like you said, you sought a mentor, and some of our mentors, when I had someone share with me, like, you had a mentor really inspiring and helpful. And whenever I get a compliment about, I'm a physical therapist, they're like, you do this really well. I didn't come up with that. I was groomed from that. And so the meaning of mentorship has been very important to me then in the way of giving back, because we don't do that as much anymore, even in our place of work. But it's so important to find that. And I'm glad that you talk about that. And with this mentorship, you are invited, in fact, keep going, keep giving, and every single person will keep going and keep giving. And that can only lift up further. And I applaud you for your role in that and honoring your oath at 19 as a teenager. What is, besides mentorship, what is one thing that you would say to someone else, or to yourself at 19, yourself at 25 or 30? This is one thing that will really help rise you up to your next level of your expectation, of your potential.
Thank you for asking. It's a great question. And I can share with you what I did. And again, you said something so point that the reason I talk about my mentor and share stories about him is because I didn't make up any of this. None of it. I mean, none of it. All I had was a conduit. And I was dumb enough to believe I can do it. Right. So anyway, to throw that right in there. Anyway, so here's the 40 years ago, my mentor talked me into saying 3 phrases to myself. Because you see, those things that we say to ourselves have a huge impact. And the questions we ask, we want to make sure they're the right questions. But the things we say to ourselves, because our lives really do become self-fulfilling prophecies, and so my mentor talked me into saying these 3 phrases. And as fortunes, I mean, literal fortunes came in and out of my life and in and out of my life over again. And he said, you're going to get tackled 1,000 times in your life. Everyone does. He said, but these 3 phrases will help you through every bit of that. And I'm going to share them with your listeners, praying that they begin to use these 3 phrases, because I can share with you through thick and thin, through the days where the sun is shining so brightly and where where it's raining like crazy and you're saying, I'm thankful for rain because that's what makes everything green, right? So these are the 3 things that I share with your listeners. I will never give up. I will keep rising up. And I will always overcome.
The story that EA shares is really how the belief of one person can shape your life. And it made me pause and think about how many times we will stop and need the opinions and validation of so many people, especially people we don't know. Especially people we don't know that well and likely do not care for ourselves. Let's face it, not everyone is in our 5 selected or in our zone of influence that is a positive influence. But EA talks about those who give and those who take, and how we can encourage ourselves to be around those that are willing to give, and how we can create a giving personality ourselves. I loved his story about how he sat down and learned how to ask the right questions and sought out someone to help him be a mentor in his entire life. And that is what he is doing now, being a mentor to others. So if you find this podcast episode today interesting and you know someone who could really benefit from hearing, I would encourage you to share it, send it to someone you know will really appreciate it and could benefit from it today. And I also encourage you to leave a heartfelt review of this podcast. It does so much to put In the Rising podcast in the hands and ears of those it can really make a difference for. I encourage you to reach out to me at Bettina@intherising.com. And thank you so much for your time today, because you know what? Time is something we don't get back. I look forward to hearing from you. And until next time, let's keep building one another up.